You've got to respect the Arch Advocate podcast, RESPICT. Ladies and gentlemen, the rhyme master, Al Sharpton, at it again. The old race baiter. I don't understand how this guy is still employed. Did you know that that guy used to be like the road manager for James Brown, right? The godfather of soul. Like, how did you leave that gig? You know what I mean? How did you leave the music industry? Like, you could have been your weird self in the music industry and maintained like a great deal of respect, but you decided to go talk about politics. How does that transition even happen? How does this guy have a job at a mainstream news outlet? Right? We're just going to give this guy who says the most ridiculous things, this guy who's in trouble with the IRS for not paying his taxes, this guy who's made an overwhelming, like an abundant amount of money by just being a race baiter. Like it's strange because even a leftist can look at that guy and be like, yeah, he's kind of a, he's a race baiter. Like that's his whole gig is to get people all worked up over race. Right? And I don't like this. I don't like this because most people, if they're told that they have a problem, they'll believe it. Right? Like that's how if most of you have had the experience of having somebody like a friend or an acquaintance or somebody at church or somebody in your bowling league or whatever, somebody in your circle, we've all had that experience of somebody coming to you and saying, hey man, I want you to come to this meeting, man. I found this really cool way to make money. They're gonna have a meeting. I want you to come. And it's like the first time you've ever heard that, it's like, oh, okay, like I'm in. Like obviously I have a problem of I want to make more money. And this guy's saying he found a good way to do it. Like the first time somebody comes to you with that, you're like, oh, okay. And then you go to a meeting and you sit in some dude's living room and they start telling you about Amway. And you're just like, oh God, I have to pay you $350 to sell your product? Nah. Right? And then later on in life, somebody else will come to you and they'll be like, dude, I got this wonderful way of making money. And you're just like, let me guess. Is it Amway? Oh no, it's even better. Oh, it must be timeshares. You know what I mean? Or something like that. Like when you present somebody with a problem and tell other people that they have a problem, like usually they'll consider it, because we all want to learn, we all want to become better as people. We want to learn new things. And so if somebody comes along and says, well, you have this problem, like for most people, I would imagine, people will stop and be like, maybe I do have a problem with this. And that's the problem with running around calling everybody a racist is like, most people are going to, like, if you would have done that to me, I don't know, what year is this? 2018. So if you would have come to me 20 years ago, 1998, this is long before, almost 2 decades before everybody started running around calling everybody a racist. Like if you would have come to me and said, hey Pete, like there's these things that you do and they're really racist, like I would stop and consider what you said, because it's like, dude, nobody wants to be a racist, right? Like there is racism in the world, but it's certainly not like we've got bigger fish to fry. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of one of those things that has been taken care of itself since the 1960s. You know what I mean? We passed some laws, people kind of woke up to the idea like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be such an asshole. There's a lot bigger problems in the world, but at the same time, it's like if you would have called me a racist 20 years ago, I would have stopped and been like, But then again, I was 25. You know what I mean? I was a lot more vulnerable, or not vulnerable. What's the word I'm looking for? I was a lot more gullible, I suppose. Because you get, the older you get, the wiser you get, the less gullible you get. And it's like, one of the listeners, Matthew Pink. Mr. Pink. Matthew, I'm just going to call you Mr. Pink, because of Reservoir Dogs. Your name is Mr. Pink from now on. Mr. Pink, the crypto creep. You get to be one of the crypto creeps, by the way. Matt Pink wrote in and said, hey, what do you think about Hegel? And now, Hegel was he was a German philosopher about 200 years ago. And he wrote a lot of profound things, but one of the things he wrote is he said if you're not going to truly know freedom until you truly separate yourself from caring about what other people think about you, right? There was a book recently, it came out in the last year or two. It was called The Art of Not Giving an F, right? I still want to read that book. I haven't read it yet, and I found out about it on the Tim Ferriss show. Which, by the way, if you're into podcasts, you should tune into the Tim Ferriss show. But it's that same concept of like there's a way to do it and a way not to do it. Like there's a lot of people that walk around and they're like, you'll hear it in their voice. They'll be like, "Man, I don't give a F," and it's like, no, clearly you do. Clearly you do give an F about other people, what they think about you, because you have so much emotion in you when you say that you don't give an F. Like when you truly are free of of being encumbered by what other people think of you to such a degree that it dictates your actions and your art, right? Your sense of creativity. You're not going to be free until you can say, like, it doesn't matter what these people think about me. At the same time, there's a responsibility. It's like, I don't want to piss anybody off. Like, that's not my objective. And if somebody truly, it says something that's worthwhile about something that I've done or something that I've said, and they would come to me and say, well, hey, Pete, I disagree. I'll give you a perfect example, right? Now, for those of you that have been listening for a long time, you know that I make the claim that I am a follower of the Lord Jesus Christ, right? I identify myself as somebody who walks in the way. If you know your church history, you'll know the significance of putting it that way. I'm a Christian, right? And sometimes I cuss. Now, I'm getting better about that for a number of reasons. One is because I have a 1-year-old child now. And every time I cuss and my baby's around, I always think to myself, like, man, I'm going to raise a little cusser if I don't change my ways, right? And it's like the voice of God is now inside of me saying, hey, man, I've let you put this on the back burner, but now it's time to confront this area of your life. Like, you have to stop cussing. My wife, which, by the way, today is my anniversary, my first anniversary. If you do the math, Wednesday is my son's first birthday. So, yes, I got my wife pregnant and we got married. It happened in that order. Which is another thing. Like people sometimes write me and they're like, well, how do you call yourself a Christian when you do all these things? Right? Well, it's like there's a number of reasons. One, I recognize the fact that I shouldn't be cussing. I know that. But it's not for you. Right? The reason I need to stop cussing doesn't have anything to do with you, and it doesn't have anything to do with what you believe your interpretation of Scripture is on that subject of cussing. Because my interpretation, and by the way, you want to get into a battle of quoting Scripture with me, I welcome all comers. Right? You want to do that with me, I will be happy to engage you in that particular battle. But I digress. Like my interpretation of Scripture is not dependent on yours, right? The reason I need to stop cussing is because, I have a wife, and she is pretty much just made of sugar and spice and everything nice. She is sweet. She is a sweet, gentle soul, and, I've noticed that, as I've been cussing around my house, she starts using the same language as me, and it's like, oh, that's my sweet wife using filthy language. I don't like that. And what's worse is I know where she gets it from. She gets it from me, and that's the voice of God telling me, like, man, you should probably straighten yourself out, man. Like, there's a better way. And it will bring you into an even deeper, more enriched relationship with me, you know what I mean? The voice that is speaking, the Almighty, right? Why did I just say all that? Is this? You can't care. The amount of value that you put on what other people think about you, it it cannot be the thing that governs your life, right? At the same time, I'm not saying be an asshole, because there's people out there that their idea of being free from what other people think is a license to be an asshole. Don't do that. That's not being free. That's being a slave to when people do that, when they say, I don't give an F, man, what they're really saying is that, instead of being a slave to caring about other people, I have changed my slavery to that of being a slave to pissing people off just so that I can get a response out of them and know that I'm alive. That's a different kind of slavery, and I could probably argue that it's worse. When you're free of it all, it's like, I don't have to offend you and I don't have to please you. I have to do what I have to do. I have to know myself, and I must use my creative core, and I must speak and create, right? Like your freedom of speech listen, anytime you have a freedom, right? You have the freedom of speech, you have the right to protect yourself, right? The right to bear arms. You have all these different rights. And if every single one of those rights that you have, if you have not confronted the fact that it is a burdensome responsibility, it is a heavy weight to bear, then you're not truly experiencing that freedom, right? You have the right to speak. That comes with a great deal of responsibility. You have to learn to be precise with your words. And not only that, you have to understand that historically, right? We have mankind pretty well figured out at this point, right? We have enough volumes of written history, right? So for the last almost 500 years, we've had the printing press, right? That's a fairly new development in the arc of the history of mankind. So now we have this printing press, and we can just crap out books all day long and send them all over the world. We can print up books in every different language that has a written language. And we can show people like this is what humanity has done the entire time. And there are threads, right? There's constants sewed into the fabric of human history, right? Like if you're like me and you read the Bible, you'll notice that when you read the Old Testament is, if I were to give you a snapshot of it from, I don't know, towards the end of Genesis till to the last book, what is it, Malachi? It's 6 different stories of 6 different groups of people of the same tribe, right? It's like 6 different, longer than generations, but it's 6 different stories of these people making the same mistakes and coming to the same conclusion, like over and over and over again, right? God says, listen, you're going to screw up, and when you do, you need to repent and come back to me. And that's what they do. Like God sets them free, makes them healthy, and makes them rich, makes them, gives them their own nation. And then they piss it all away, and then they go back to the scriptures and they read the part where God said, like, if you just repent and come back to me, like, I'll make you better. And so that's what they do. They repent and God makes them better. It's 6 different stories of them doing exactly that over and over and over again. So now we see a thread in, the arc of human history. Well, all of history is like that. It's all like that. And now that we have the printing press, like, we don't need a priest, because prior to 500 years ago, if you wanted to hear from a book, like, you would live in a village, maybe 5,000 people, and only one of those people would be able to read. And that guy was almost always the priest. That's how you learn stuff. That's kind of a dangerous proposition, because that puts a lot of power in the hands of that priest. But that's just how it was. You know what I mean? Like, not everybody knew how to read. Now that everybody does, not everybody, but close, we can go through history and we can see certain things. There's certain things that human beings are capable of, and they're capable of wonderful and miraculous invention and innovation and inspiration. You know what I mean? There's been characters throughout history that we can look at and be like, I want to be like that guy. I want to do what that guy did in that instant. You know, there's this part about that guy's life that I do like. There's also a part that I don't like. So I'm just going to pick from the good and be like, yeah, I want to be like that. Right? And there's also horrible tragedy. Right? Like we can look at people like Genghis Khan, Adolf Hitler, Pol Pot, Mao Zedong, right? Mussolini. Like we can look at these people, Nero, right? Like if you want to get like, well, I guess what's his name was pretty old, but you know what I mean? There's a lot of people that we can look at and we can say like these people were evil and I hope I don't do anything like those people, right? So we can go back and we can see what these people's strategy was, like how to control the masses, like, you know, Pol Pot, like Mussolini and Hitler and Stalin and Lenin and all these people. Like we can look like what did they do, what did they say, right? What did they implement? And one of those things, like like if you want to control people, large swaths of people, you have to try to control their speech. That's one of the things that it doesn't matter what you think about history, right? Like if you don't come to that conclusion, then you didn't read it right, because all of academia and everybody who has, you know, a studied opinion on this is like, yep, this guy did it. Like it was Lenin who said, you know, if you want to subdue a people, just you know, take their books away from them, take their history books away from them. Because once the people forget who they are, then you can turn them into whatever you want them to be. That's a profound thing. And we see that coming up again in 2018. We can see, it's like, Bohica, man, bend over, here it comes again. Here it comes again. We've seen it. We've already seen it. Now, free speech becomes a burdensome thing to carry. You are free, and you must put that freedom on your back and carry it up that vicious mountain. Right? You think freedom's like, I'm free. No, it's a heavy burden, and it will cost you your life if you're lucky. Right? We have seen through history. There is a constant thread. It's always there. It's always there with the tyrants, right? Sic semper, what was it? Sic semper tyrannis. Sic semper tyrannis. That's always the tyrant. That's what John Wilkes Booth, the actor, right? The Hollywood liberal. That's what he said when he shot Lincoln. Lincoln, however, was not a tyrant, but you know, we can look through history. We can find all the tyrants. We can find out, like, okay, what was this guy's strategy? Like, how did, yes, I get that he was a tyrant, but how did he come into power? How did he maintain that power for as long as he or she did? Well, I don't think there's a she, really, but how did this happen? Well, you go back and you look, you find out what their philosophy was, what their actions were, what their strategies were, and it was always first, you know, silence the dissenters, remove their history from them, make them forget who they are. And now, here we are, 2018, and you will be charged, right? Or you are being charged to take up that mantle once again. What are you going to do when they come to steal your words out of your mouth and silence your voice? Like a punk, right? Like a slave. Are you going to make that horrible decision to either live out, you know, live on your knees or die on your feet? It's a hell of a decision to make, man. And if you are not grateful for your freedom of speech or any of the freedoms that you have, but let's just talk about the freedom of, let's when I say freedom of speech, I'm talking about all of them, but I'm just going to use this one because it's you know, we can put a laser beam on it and kind of focus in on it. You have the freedom of speech, and there are people right now, visibly, that we can see are trying to take that away from you, and they're doing it right now. Just as, look, Hitler didn't just show up one day and get on the world stage with a big ass microphone and television cameras rolling. He didn't just take over Germany. You know what I mean? There was an ascension. There was a process that he went through. And at first it was like, listen, don't be saying stuff like this. It's okay, but don't be saying stuff like that. And then it turned into, well, it's now against the law to say this, and if you do, we're going to throw you in the gulag. We're going to throw you in a concentration camp. You know what I mean? There was a progression. And what do we see right now? People can say, well, oh, you're just talking about Alex Jones. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Now he is the sort of firebrand right now, but he's certainly not the first one. Tommy Robinson. Look, man, if you're not fully familiar with the life of Tommy Robinson, you need to make yourself familiar with that, because these are the days that we're living in. That guy got thrown in prison and starved for speaking his mind. Tommy Robinson made a stand and said, I would rather die than have you be in control of my voice. I'd rather that I died. Right? Because that's what freedom is. It's a horrific responsibility. It's going to come to that. We have had a lull for the last few decades where it was like, we didn't really have to fight for our freedoms. They weren't really being called into question. That was a rare period, and unfortunately, I don't think any of us really enjoyed it for what it was. But whatever it was, it's over now. You have Jack Dorsey on television. All right? Now again, let's judge Jack Dorsey really quick. Let's have a look at that guy's face as he's talking. Does that guy not look like he's this close to jumping off of a bridge? How depressed does that guy look? How sad does that guy look? He looks like he's miserable. Right? And what did he say about Alex Jones? Right? Now, again, I'm not here to beat on the Alex Jones drum. I'm using this as an example, but I can use many others. I can use Tommy Robinson and Paul Joseph Watson and Steven Crowder and those kids over there at Educating Liberals, right? Their YouTube channel just got censored. There's all these conservative voices who are not even saying controversial things on YouTube, and they're being censored and demonetized and all this other stuff. Those are all actions to silence you. It's exactly what the Nazis did. It's exactly what Adolf Hitler did on his way up. It's what Mussolini did when he started the fascist movement. The fascista. The fasci. That's what Mussolini did. It's what Pol Pot did. It's what Mao Zedong did. It's what they all did. Right? But I'm going to use this example because I think it goes to the mindset of the people who are trying to silence you. Like, here's the thing. No evil person thinks that they're evil. I said it before, man. You go read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And the whole first chapter of that is about evil men. Murderers and rapists and all these kind of people. And they were being interviewed in prison. And they were asked, like, do you understand, like, how evil you were? And these people are like, oh, no, man, I did this for the good of humanity, man. I'm a good person. Like murderers and stuff. Like, evil people do not think that they're evil. They believe that they're good. Right? That's why you need a book to tell you. You know what I mean? Because power, when it gets into your head, it's like, oh no, man, I'm doing good here. I'm doing good. It's like, no, you need a template. You need a list of rules so that when you start going crazy, you can go back to the book and be like, oh, okay, yeah, don't do that. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, Jack Dorsey's on TV. They're asking him about Alex Jones, and Jack Dorsey says, well, I put him on a timeout so that he would think about his actions. A timeout. And this is very interesting. Again, man, words, they're everything. right? Out of his mouth spoke the abundance of his heart, right? Out of his mouth we can see what is in his heart. He believes that he is a parent and that the people that are using his platform, those are his children, right? Timeout is a word that we use on children. It used to be called a spanking until the 90s when the timeout was invented, but it used to be called an ass whooping. But nobody ever said about their own children, yeah, I beat my kid's ass. You know what I mean? We said, we gave him a spanking. We gave him a whooping. Right? When you use those words, it meant like, yeah, I beat my kid, but it was not violent. It was correctionary, and it was corporal punishment in order to correct a particular type of behavior. And as parents, we have that responsibility. It's like, I have to make sure that I don't raise another damn useless person, because there's a lot of those people walking around right now. I have to do that. I have to make sure that my sons are hardworking, respectful of their elders, respectful of people's varying cultures and religions and all kinds of other things, like respectful of that stuff, yet firm in his own beliefs, secure and confident in his own beliefs. And there's things that I'm going to have to do. They're going to be very uncomfortable for me. But there's things that I'm going to have to do to ensure that I don't unleash another shitty person on you. Because I am the parent. I am the father. Now, when Jack Dorsey goes on TV and says, oh yeah, Alex Jones, I am the father, I am the parent, and I need to spank him for saying whatever it was that Alex Jones said. Well, wow. That's exactly how Mao Zedong saw himself. That is exactly how Mussolini and Hitler and all these people, that's how they saw themselves. They saw themselves as good, and these are my children, and I am the father. How very noble of you, Jack. You depressed looking. How many different pills do you take a day to monitor, or to regulate your emotions? There's no way you've got that face on you, and there's no way you have that face without pharmaceutical help. You're not a well man, Jack, and you're not anybody's parent. You own a successful company, and you're about to drive it into the ground. Right? But the freedom of speech, man, this is what I'm saying, is like now, like we can see that these people who have very strong connections and relationships with people who hold political power, we can see these people making moves to try to silence a particular voice. You can't do that. Even when we all know that the voice is wrong. You can't do it. I told you guys this story before. I was flying back from Australia in 2004, 2005, somewhere in there. And when I landed, I read the newspaper, and this guy had been arrested in Australia like the same day that I left at the airport. It was this dude from England who had not been to Australia in over 20 years. And the last time that he was in Australia, he was giving lectures about how the Holocaust had never happened. Right? He was one of these Holocaust denier people. And I really thought about that, man. I really struggled, because in my lifetime, I have sworn an oath to protect the Constitution and, obey the president and all that stuff. I really struggled with that because, people that talk, the Holocaust denying people talk, I don't like that. I think that's, like, not only do I think it's stupid, I think it's harmful. You know what I mean? I think it hurts society when you spread bullshit. So I really thought about that, man. Like, I really gave it some thought. I was like, man, I love the freedom of speech, but couldn't we just get rid of that one aspect of speech? We did outlaw yelling fire in a movie theater, right? We did make laws around calling for violence against people. You can't do that unless, of course, the person that you're calling violence against is they themselves being violent. Right? You can't do that. Compelled speech. You can't compel other people's speech unless, of course, right, we have rules, unless, of course, you're a corporation and you're trying to sell something. If you have, if you're selling cigarettes, the cigarette companies have compelled speech on them. They have to put a warning on the label. That's compelled speech. But that's a little bit different because you're not an individual. You're a corporation and you're trying to profit. That's we do have speech laws about that. And since we're already that far into it, can't we just say, like, don't be saying that, don't be a flat earther, don't be a Holocaust denier, don't do that. I really thought about that, but no, we have to let those people speak. And why? Well, I am the reason why, right? You are the reason why, because when you hear that stuff, you can look at it and say, no, I don't believe that, and I don't believe you, and I don't like you, and I don't want you around my family or my community. Right? You can do whatever you want. You want to buy that house next door to me, you go right on ahead, because that's your right to do. But don't, I don't have to be in a relationship with you. You know what I mean? Like, we as reasonable people, when people say stuff like that, we can just say, no, that's dumb. Right? Alex Jones said some things that were over the top about the Sandy Hook shooting. And Alex Jones has said some other things that actually make a lot of sense. He's put some things together where it's like, well, if you look at it like that, it's like, that does make sense. He's also said a lot of things that are controversial, I would say even wrong. But I'm smart. And I don't need you, Jack Dorsey. I don't need your drugged out brain deciding what is good and right for me. I'm smart enough. Don't need you. It's not your place. Furthermore, you continue to try to silence people's speech and take away their God-given freedom of speech. Then it's going to wake people up like me, who are going to put that burden back on their back and say, okay, I guess I'm going to carry this. And it's not going to be as easy as it was for Hitler and Mussolini. There was no social media back then. People could not see what everybody else in the world was doing. That's another reason why all those people got away with it. It's because back then there was barely even television. There was no cell phones. There was no, you know what I mean? Like, if you got news in a newspaper, by the time you got it, it was 2 days old. Now we can see things in real time. Jack, we can see you in real time. Hey, Google, we can see you in real time. And we see that you are moving in the spirit of Hitler, Stalin, Pol Pot, all these people. You're just in the very beginning stages. And believe me, when it comes to this, there are many of us, who would rather die than give up our God-given rights. Right? And you got to think about that, because there's two sides to that. And I was explaining to my wife the other day, it's like, man, I'm really coming into a realization of what it's like, what it truly means to be a parent. Like, I understand now, like, I would die for my family. Right? I would die for my family. And I wouldn't even hesitate, But there's another side to that. Because I would die for them, like, if somebody comes to attack my children, the inverse is true as well. I would kill for them. Without reservation. You come against my family, I'm prepared to die. But what's more is I'm prepared to make sure that you die for what you believe. All right, and that goes back to the old Marine Corps thing. Like, it was a saying, it was, I don't want to die for my country. I want to make the other guy die for his. Right? Let that guy be a patriot. I'll help him. Your freedom of speech is under attack by psychopaths. Jack Dorsey, go back and watch that. You can look it up on YouTube. Go back and just look at his face. Does that look like a sound, healthy, bright-eyed, clear-minded individual to you? talking about I put a grown man on a timeout, like he's a child. Like how big of a psychopath do you have to be to talk like that? Your freedom of speech is under attack, people. And when it comes time to fight, because these people, they'll give up eventually, right? But we've got a long ways to go. There's a ways to go. The way that you're going to get the strength to make those kinds of decisions and to do it clearly, right? Well, one of the main things is you're going to have to be in community. You cannot make decisions on your own, right? In any time of war, you need strategies, you need generals, and everything in between, all the way down to the private, all the way down to the infantryman. You need everybody in between. Like, you need people around you so that you don't go crazy, right? So that you don't turn into some weird vigilante. You need people around you. But when it comes time, when these people push to snatch up your language, like they have in New York, where they have compelled speech, where you have to call people Z and Zer and all that stuff, like there's a fight coming. And the way that you're going to have the strength to get through that fight and maintain your peace of mind so that you don't go crazy and so that you don't do things that later on you end up feeling guilty about for the rest of your life, the way that you do that is gratefulness. Be grateful that you have the freedom of speech. Be grateful to such a degree that it brings tears to your eyes. Like, oh my God, I am so grateful that I have this ability, and that the forefather, the framers, when they wrote that document, they said, listen, this isn't coming from government. The government does not give you the right to free speech. God does. The inalienable rights endowed by the Creator. Endowed by the Creator. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And here's all the things that we're going to attach to this document that say, number one, you have the right to speak. Number two, you have the right to defend yourself when your words start pissing people off. Number three, number four, down the line, like, you have to be grateful that even the framers, in their infinite wisdom, they sat down and they put it together and they said, look, you have to understand also that your freedom does not come from the government. Your government has no say in this. And that the true government, the proper and true government, is the people. It starts in your home, right? That is the purest form of government, is your home. And then it goes out to your next door neighbor. And that's, there's a government that forms between you and your neighbor. And as I was saying with Tim Price, it's like, you know what? I'm not going to throw a block party that goes on until the wee hours of the morning because I have neighbors. There is an unwritten law, an unspoken law, to not be a dick. Don't keep your neighbors up all night. Well, that's a government, right? You are being governed by your accountability to the people around you. That's the pure government. And then it extends. It goes out another, then it goes to, your block and your neighborhood. And then it extends out to your school district where all the kids, everybody that lives in a certain area and all your kids get educated together. And then it extends out to your county. And then it extends out again to your state. And then it extends out again to to the United States, right? The Federation. And then it goes global. But it all starts in the home. And if you do not preserve your rights, and if you are not grateful for the things that you have, you will be easily subdued. You will be easily punked and subdued by another man, and your rights will be taken from you, and you will gladly give them up because you didn't have any value in them to begin with. That's the cost of ungratefulness. You lose all of the things that you took for granted. All right? That's the show for today. If you want to support the show, go on to archadvocate.com, arch-advocate.com. Become a monthly patron. You can throw some dough on PayPal. You can do whatever you want. Hey, we got some good guests coming up here pretty soon. Also, I'll be announcing some changes to the format of the show. I think I'm going to change up service providers. And that's going to cause a bit of a rift, but I will get into that as the week goes on. Hey, man, I have to go. I've got some important stuff today. It is my first wedding anniversary today, and I'm gonna go collude with the Russians. Anyways, you guys have a great day. I will talk to you tomorrow.